Hi, everyone, and welcome to El Camino People, the podcast. Today, a new season. We are getting closer to that 100 chapter. Seems like it was yesterday that we started, but it's already been 3 years sharing, Camino People stories. And today we have with us Brian. How are you doing, Brian?
Hey, I'm doing very well. How are you doing today?
No complaints. I wish I was in the Camino like the many people that they're walking right now, because as
Yeah.
we are right now, September, finally things are looking great here in Spain and things getting better. And we're seeing more and more pilgrims coming, more on the older ages,
Mhm.
retired
Yeah.
Germans, Polish or French. But it's been crazy. Like this summer, we've seen the numbers, and Santiago is back to normal almost there. So,
That
so
makes me
great
so
for
happy to
everyone.
hear. I'm so happy that pilgrims are walking right now. I missed the Camino. I wish I was there right now too.
And that's the whole goal of this, bringing the Camino to everyone's houses. And at least, that's one of the things. If you can walk as a truly in the Camino, and I think, once you're a pilgrim and you get to Santiago, you are walking all your life to Santiago. But at least we can bring that Camino spirit, to everyone's houses, and for a little bit, transfer them to the Camino. And that's something that you do great, because for the ones that don't know you, you are a writer, a dancer, a filmographer. But today we are here to talk about your book.
Yeah, I'm so excited to share it with you and everybody out there in the world. It's been just a life-changing experience writing it and a life-changing experience for some people that have read it. I've actually inspired several people to go walk the Camino so far. Some have done it virtually, with the app, but I'm super excited to share it with
But
as
that's
many
the
people.
that's the thing that I'm right now. I did the virtual Camino a while ago with this company that they send you a big medal. I know that
Mhm.
right now there's a couple, the Friends of the Camino, that they're doing the virtual Camino, and you can walk the Camino as many different ways. I always said, that your Camino doesn't start the day you arrive to San Jan, the way you arrive to Barcelona, whatever you start your Camino. Starts the day that the Camino knocks on your door, and suddenly you know that you're walking, and that can happen at any moment, any time in your life.
It's so true. And there's no wrong way to walk the Camino. That's what I've
Yeah.
come to find. So many different ways to do it.
And they're all valid. At the end, if you are cheating or you feel you're cheating, the only one that you're cheating is yourself. And
Mhm.
there's many ways to walk the Camino, even without walking the Camino.
Exactly.
Okay, so let me put the timer, because as we always start with a 1 minute questionnaire. It's that set of
All
questions that
right.
we get
Getting
to
ready.
every pilgrim just to get them ready. So let me put here 1 minute timer. Okay, so remember, the whole idea is whatever comes to your mind. Don't overthink it. Some people got stuck. Just, throw it away. Are
Okay,
you
sounds
ready?
good. I'm ready.
Let's go there. Your first Camino.
Was in 2007. It was amazing.
One city.
Pamplona.
One meal.
Tortilla.
A memory.
Birds.
A song.
Birds.
A happy moment.
Arriving in Santiago.
A sad moment.
Arriving in Santiago.
One color.
Green.
A smell.
Tortilla.
Canteen or camelback.
Canteen.
Shorts or long pants.
Shorts.
Fisterra, mushia.
Finisterre.
Tortilla with onions or without onions.
With onions.
Café solo cortado con leche.
Con leche. Con leche de soya.
Apple or Android.
Say again?
Apple or Android.
Apple.
Drink.
Coffee.
Okay, pretty well. I have to say you're probably one of the ones that has gone the farthest so far.
Well, I'll tell you what, I repeated a couple, so
I know that's
bit.
cheating, but it was also fair. And like if you say a color Santiago, that will be a little weird, but the other ones were totally fair. So as we were talking at the beginning, your Camino starts when you first get to know the Camino, with someone, talks to you, you read a book, you watch the movie. What happened in your case? I'm like, you live in the States. How did you, get to know the Camino or find the Camino in your life?
Absolutely. So essentially, for those that don't know, I'm originally a professional dancer. So I traveled the world teaching dance and performing. I've taught in 32 different countries around the world.
Wow.
It's been an amazing, awesome career, and so much fun. I've been able to contribute so much to the world through it. And in 2007, I think it's 2006 or 2007, I was on a tour in Europe, and I had an extra 2 weeks in Spain. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? right? And 2006, 2007, there wasn't very much online about the Camino or anything. And I was like, oh, this Camino de Santiago thing sounds interesting. And so I looked it up, and I ended up on the Primitivo route instead of the French route. And it was in the fall. Yeah, exactly. It was in the fall, and I didn't have any maps. I didn't have any sleeping bag. I didn't have any equipment. I had a backpack, but I didn't have anything. I didn't know about a pilgrim's passport. I knew nothing, right? So I get there, and I'm like wandering around, not sure what to do. They're not letting me check into the albergue because I don't have a pilgrim's passport. So I have to go to the church. I don't speak Spanish, so I'm trying to talk with the priest of the church. Finally, I get to the tourist office, and they give me a passport, and I check in, and I'm in this albergue with a lot of beds, and I'm the only person in there. I was like, oh crap, what did I get myself into? I don't know what I'm doing. And so I did know you have to follow the arrows. Like I'd read that. So I left the town. I started following the arrows, but back then the route wasn't very well marked. And I got lost. Like my second day in, I'm completely lost. No idea where I am. I'm just wandering around. And finally, I start pushing myself. It rains. I don't have rain gear. So I find a trash bag and cover myself with a trash bag and hang out. Finally, I communicate a little bit with the farmer, and I go back. But by this time, I've already been walking all day. I've been pushing my body, and my knees start to hurt. And so when I get into the city, my knees are hurting. I'm like, oh crap, that's not good, especially being a dancer. And every day after that, as I walked, my knees got worse and worse and worse and worse until the day before Santiago, I couldn't walk. I mean, like I was literally walking with two sticks, like an old grandmother. Like it was really embarrassing, but like, that's one of the things the Camino does, is it humbles you in so many ways. And it's so wonderful.
And how does one go from touring, Europe as a dancer to the Camino Primitivo? I'm like, in those days, the Camino wasn't big on the internet, but I guess the mostly known was the Camino Frances. Yeah. How do you end up in the Primitivo?
I have no idea. But I'll tell you why in a second. Like, I always think, people are called to the Camino, right? Some choose the path, but others are called. And I felt like I was called to be that. And the reason why was, as I continued to walk, my knees got worse and worse. And I'm finally, the last day, I can't walk into Santiago. Like, I can't. And this guy's like, you need to take a bus. You're really hurting yourself. And so I hop on a bus with, just a few kilometers to go after I've pushed through so much pain to get there. And like, I get to the streets and I'm like hobbling. It takes me like 10 minutes to walk up the steps to get into the church. And I look around and there are barely any pilgrims in there, but I see one older lady sitting there by herself. And so I walk up to her, and when I see her, she's bawling. She's like crying her eyes out. And I say, can I hold you? And so I sat down and I put my arm around her and I held her. And it turns out her husband had just passed the year before, and she didn't know what to do with her life, which is why she was walking the Camino. And she has MS. So she did her Camino in a van with her little dog from the Netherlands, just by herself, not knowing what she was doing, just like me, not knowing what I was doing. And, she hadn't talked to a single pilgrim her whole pilgrimage. And finally, here she was, just like crying my arms. And I realized at the moment, if I hadn't hurt my knees, I wouldn't have been there to hold that woman in that moment. And she would have had just this lonely experience of being there. But, I feel like God put me there. That happened to my knees. So I could just be there to comfort this person as they were going. It was just such a beautiful, beautiful moment. And I'm never going to forget it. It's one of those things that just sticks with you forever. It's not about you. It's about who you can serve and other people. And in that moment, I felt it, and I felt that presence. And I also vowed to myself, I was going to walk that last day into Santiago. So I thought I'd come back at some point to do it again. But that was my first Camino. That's how I was called there. I don't know how or why, but it's just been such a huge part of my life since then.
But that's the beautiful part of the Camino. I always think that the Camino, and I repeat myself many times, and like, you go to the Camino looking for something, but the Camino has something waiting for you. Absolutely. It may be what you're looking for, but it may be not. And in your case, it wasn't finishing the Camino the normal way you say. And I was talking the other day with someone, and we were talking about how in the Camino you break yourself in small pieces and give that to others, but also others give themselves, in small pieces, and you put them in your backpack. And as you say, you had to walk, you weren't able to walk the last part because you need to be there for that woman. And
it's amazing. And I think the Camino doesn't always give you what you want, but it gives you exactly what you need to fulfill your life's purpose.
That's the perfect t-shirt. I'm gonna make it. I'm like the Camino.
It's one of the quotes in my book. But yeah, so, I really feel that.
You walk the Camino, you are a professional dancer. For the ones that don't know, the Camino Primitivo is the hardest Camino that usually, and that time of the year probably was rainy, muddy, so incredibly hard times twice.
Slippery walks, falling, like things, yeah.
And if you're not into trekking, with no poles, no gear, no correct backpack, probably it was a nightmare for you.
It was, but well worth it.
And that's, one thing, after many years of hiking and bikepacking, I realized that the moments that I remember, and the best, the more beautifully are the hardest ones. I'm like, the ones that I am having fun, they go to the back. And the ones that I suffer the most, they come to the front with a great feeling, not like suffering. It's just, I don't know, it's overcoming something.
That's where growth happens. It's like you grow when you're put out of your comfort. I think about, so we just bought this house and we have roses, right? I've never had roses before. I have no idea what to do with roses. But what I found out is, we had some death on the bottom, but the moment I removed like the dead leaves and everything, guess what? New life started spreading out. We got all these other rose buds that weren't there before when it was just this dead plant. But I had to put it through the painful experience of removing those petals so it could grow. It's like pruning.
Yeah, but sometimes without knowing what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
So dancer, that's the Camino, suffers, and then you go back home. What do the friends and your professional friends, your family told you? I'm like, you're stupid. I'm like, you can injure yourself. Your whole career will be done. And there you are in Spain walking.
Totally. Well, that's what I'm thinking the whole time. I'm like, I might have just screwed up my career, but you know what? I feel like I'm called to be here and I'm going to do this, So it's one of those things. When I feel called to do something, I'm not going to let anything stop me. And that's it, hands down. If I feel called to do it and I feel that, that deep-seated call in your soul, like I'm going to make sure I can do everything possible to make it come into this world and make it happen. And that's what I felt about the Camino. I felt that deep calling that I had to do this,
And it's incredible, I was talking today how we usually talk about the last 100K and we should rename them the first 100K. Because it's really, when you ride to Santiago, when your real Camino starts. And so what happened after you finish, how was the arrival? Like, in your case, you were feeling defeated. You didn't finish your Camino, but there you were.
Yeah. So well, I felt humbled, and it was just like such an amazing, and what a contrast, right? Going from on stage where you're in front of like 2,000 people, everybody listening to every word you say, like huge, everything happening, to just being this like broken person that can't use their body to like in tatters, because my clothes are all like dirty at that point and everything. And just like that absolute humiliation. And it's wonderful because, it's just all about getting rid of that ego and going through. So, yeah.
So the Camino put you, as they say, on your knees.
Exactly. And everyone seems to have done it in a different way.
Yeah. And then you go back home, and what were your thoughts of the Camino? Were you already, like in Santiago, like, I'm going to do it again?
Absolutely.
Or was it
I vowed to myself, I'm going to come back and finish this and do it again, because it's just such a beautiful experience. And, I felt so close to God. I felt so just feeling so hard to explain.
That's the tricky part of the Camino, the ones that we have walked, we know what we're talking about, but if you're trying to explain to someone, it's like, if I need to explain it to you, you're not going to get it.
Exactly.
If you know it, I don't need to explain to you.
Exactly. That's what I feel. That's why I love talking to you right now, a fellow pilgrim.
It's like, we know. We don't need it. It's like, whatever words come out from your mouth is like, I get it. You can put a whole book, in your case, 349 pages to explain the Camino, and some people may even not get it. So what happened after that? You go back to the States. That is 2007. You're already in your career. Probably you recover, take some time off. And when you decided it was time to get back to the Camino?
So fast forward to, I believe it's 2017. So the same year that you had your first walk.
So 10 years
10
waited.
Years later. Yeah, 10 years later. I had just gone through a really bad breakup, like lost my home, my everything. And I was like, all right, it's time to go back to the Camino. And so once again, I was on tour, And I made sure I planned out my tour so I had extra time to do the Camino in there. And so I went, and I started in Burgos on this one.
Was there any planning involved this time, or
no?
Not
I mean,
at all.
like I knew at this point I knew people did the French route.
Okay.
I knew that much, and I knew I needed a sleeping bag, and you know, so I was like, okay.
The credencial was really
raincoat.
important to be able to sleep in albergues.
Exactly. And so yeah, so I start in Burgos, and as I'm walking, we get to the Arc of San Antone. And that was the moment my life changed forever. I saw this, you know, it's a giant arc stretching up into the sky and looks like it should be out of Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings. And I thought, my God, somebody's got to write a story about this, right? And then just past there, you have the city of Castelldefels, right? Mm-hmm. Which, for those of you that don't know, it's a hilled city with a castle on top, and it just is epic. So I go in and I check into the albergue, and I notice that the stamp for the city is the Cross of Jerusalem, which has 5 kind of Templar crosses on it. And I turn to the hospitero and I say, the Knights Templar. I said, what do you know about the Knights Templar? I said, I don't know. What do you know about the Knights Templar? And we got into this like awesome conversation about the history of the Templars on the Camino and the history of the Templars in that city, right down to the point of him telling me that there are still tunnels underneath the city that have that are Templar tunnels that the Templars used to use when they were there to store gold, and then also to do their rituals. Told me also about people being buried under the Arc of San Antone, like they had excavated it and all this stuff. And then as we're finishing the conversation, you know, he says to me, you know, the Templars left behind something on the Camino, like a code. You know, I can't remember still, but I remember like that was it. He said, look for the clues the Templars left behind. And he left me on that, right? So I wake up in the morning and I take my dance shoes out of my backpack because it's too heavy. My most valuable possession, you know, as a dancer, that's what it is. And there's a little secondhand shop. It wasn't open yet, but I left them outside and I said, I'll trade these in for a story. And every day after that, this book played like a movie in my head. Like the people I saw, the experiences I had all came together and just wove into this perfect narrative. And like, it was absolutely incredible. Like everything, just, I didn't know what I would write, you know. So I would wake up in the morning and walk underneath the stars because I love walking before anybody else is awake. And as this is playing like a movie in my head, I would dictate into my telephone. And so like by the time I'd finished the Camino, I had an entire story, which is turned into a trilogy, all there. Now, there was only one problem, right? I actually grew up with dyslexia in a 3rd grade reading and spelling level. So I missed out on all of grammar in school and everything. It's like, I always say God has a sense of humor, right? He made me fat. I was really big when I was young, and I became a dancer, and I grew up with dyslexia, and now I'm an author. So, you know, it's just like,
here we are. I don't even know how to write my name without making grammar. So
exactly. And so like, I get to this point where I'm like, I've got to do this. And like I said before, when I feel called to do something, I'm not going to let anything stop me. I'm just like, I'm there, you know, like I'm going to make this happen. And so I dedicated myself to writing 2,000 words a day, no matter what.
Wow.
Right. And so, because I wasn't on tour, so I had a little bit of time. So I was like 2,000 words a day, no matter what. So I sat down and started just writing out 2,000 words a day, no matter what. And at that time, as I finished, I stuck to it. At first, it took me hours because I had to research all the grammar rules. And as you know, there's a lot of different opinions on where grammar goes. Like, I can't tell you how annoyed I got with this. And so I continue. And by Christmas, I had finished, I had written 100,000 words, and which was just phenomenal. And I was like, this is the best book ever. And I brought it to my girlfriend, who's now my wife at the time. And she's like, this needs work. Because obviously you don't know what you don't know, right? And so obviously I didn't know about how to write and like a grammar and anything. So I then spent the next 3 years, so I wrote the book in like 50 days, but I spent the next 3 years learning about editing, learning just the craft of writing. And fast forward to 2020, pandemic hits, and I've written this book, and I've sent it out, sent out query letters, and all I got back was like, 2 rejection letters, and 48 other agents that didn't even bother to write back to me.
Wow.
But like I said, I'm not going to let anything stop me. Like, I know I have something beautiful here, and I know I'm going to share it with the world. And so pandemic hit. So all of my income's gone from teaching tours, like, because that's my main thing, traveling the world doing that. Guess what? It's gone. So now, God's just like redirected me in this. And I said, okay, it's time to do my book. And so what we did is we ran a Kickstarter, because publishing, for those of you that don't know, publishing a book can be very expensive if you want to do a quality job. Yeah. And especially with my limitations with grammar, I need to hire editors, and I want the best editors to get in there, and cover designers and whatnot. And so we ran a Kickstarter. We ended up raising $10,000 in 30 days to pay for all
that's what is impressive, for me, that I work on Kickstarter campaigns and how hard it is to run a Kickstarter. You haven't been able to make one, you made 2.
Oh, well, we made one for the first book, one for the second, but I had done them before for movies. So I've actually raised.
Okay, so you know the craft of the Kickstarter, because it's quite tricky. And right now there's so many books, so many movies, that really finding, the people. And in both cases, you went totally over on the time, and it's great.
We overfunded. We asked for 8,000 on that one, and we got 10.5. And actually, what's super cool about that is, before my book has been released to Amazon or anywhere else, I've already sold 200 copies of my book, which is more copies than most books sell in a lifetime,
And that's what I love about, the Kickstarter gives you the perfect way to prove that your product, your service, your whatever, your MVP works. And that's why.
I'll tell you what, I told you before, like, I always believe in contribution, like community contribution and service. And so a lot of authors have come to me and asked me, how do I do this process? So we're actually putting together a course called Kickstarter to Amazon Bestseller. So any authors out there, we have a free group on Facebook, Kickstarter to Amazon Bestseller. Come join us.
I teach Kickstarter, and I work on Kickstarter campaigns. So
perfect. Yeah, dude, we're still going to geek out. Like Kickstarter to Amazon Bestseller, we're there. We have some stuff on there. We're going to expand and do courses and a whole bunch of other things.
And it's great. I think we're going to call on you, because there's also so many people that are willing to write a book about the Camino, and I think there's a great community of Camino writers that they're, as you say, some of them, they do it full professional time. Some they do it, just as a hobby. But, if we can all help each other, and, I think that it will be great to help others, get the dream. And at the end, sometimes the dream is just get 100 books from Amazon to your friends and family, and that's it,
I agree. And, the first people I invited to the group were the Camino Authors Group people. Like, they were the first one that I said, come join our group. I want to show you guys how to do these Kickstarters and whatnot.
Because once you figure out one Kickstarter, they're usually all. Yeah.
Exactly.
Anyway, let's go back to the book. We get into the marketing and things like that, and maybe another day. So you are a Templar freak like me, or does the Templar came into your Camino, or how the Templars and the Camino mix the whole story?
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, my book, I'll hold it up again.
Yeah.
So my book is called The Way Through a Field of Stars.
Oh, let's do one thing. I have the video here from your promo. Let's watch it.
Sweet. Okay, that'd be great.
Wow. Just want to go out, walk, and get my sword and, fight for the crusade.
Dude, I can't tell you, I'm so excited for when people start actually LARPing with my book, live action role playing on the Camino.
And that can be something, maybe once you're with the book, we can work on the role game, or, some card games.
Exactly. And so, so essentially, as you saw in there, we actually became an Amazon bestseller in several categories. And we also won an Eric Hoffer Award for excellence in independent publishing with the book. Wow. And for my Templar fans out there, as you see, we have there is a secret code of the Knights Templar on the Camino de Santiago.
So all these code freaks and Templar freaks like me, is just like, I read the first 2 chapters and I'm already hooked.
Awesome.
That's all I can say.
It's kind of cool. I liken my book to being like Da Vinci Code meets The Alchemist, essentially, because we have...
And right there, I'm like, you mix Paul Coelho, that I have it right here.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, perfect. Like, what can go wrong if you put, Templars and Camino Santiago and the whole codes and everything? It's like, put in beer, come in hiking and bacon and cheese.
Exactly. It's amazing. It's like, it's the best. And I feel so blessed to have been inspired to write this. I think things choose you. You don't choose them. Like the Camino chooses you. I think this book chose me, and, I'm going to keep pushing it until I get 1 million people to go walk the Camino through this book. But yeah, it's super cool. So after that guy told me to look for the symbols of the Templars, I started seeing them everywhere. Every city I went into, I saw Templar symbology. I saw sacred geometry. Actually, sacred geometry plays a lot into this book as well, like the flower of life, seed of life, tree of life, all that, which goes back to Kabbalah, which in Burgos had a big center of Kabbalah in the Middle Ages, which is incredible. And so like, I've done like all this deep research, and even I'm such a nerd, right? All my codes are based off of a 25 letter alphabet instead of a 26 letter alphabet, because the letter J didn't exist before the 1600s. So like,
and that's one of the things that, when you read the reviews about your book, everybody's like, how well researched and historically, because sometimes all these books, they get into the mystical, but some of them, they are not so great historically. In your case, you can see that the work you have done to research everything behind, and like, it's amazing. And that's sometimes because you're reading, but there are things that could have happened.
Yeah, exactly. You never know. Who knows what happened in the past, right? But the cool thing about this is, I have a funny story about that, right? So my wife does not like history at all. So when she's reading my book, she's like, I'm so bored right now, because I was going through these like huge like historical tirades. And so what we did because of that is I actually made an appendix in the back. So anybody who's a historical character, instead of giving them like the vast part there's a little number by them where you can go to the back of the book and you can look up, oh yeah, the Battle of Montesquieu was an actual battle that happened where 500 Knights Templar and a few thousand foot soldiers killed 22,000 of Saladin's army, like the most feared army at the time. How the heck did that happen, right? And that's just the way this book works. It's like, I feel like I didn't write the book per se, that it was just kind of like I said, played like a movie in my head. I don't really know what's going to happen, but then the characters kind of like figure stuff out. And it's just like, this is so cool.
So what was in you, when you say that this thing came to you in the Camino, suddenly this guy, do you know who was it? Have you ever tried to find him back, or?
No, I haven't. I mean, he was the dude who's working at the albergue, but I don't know. He when those people kind of have a twinkle in their eye and, there's something more to them than who they are.
That's funny, because something like that happened to me, but in the opposite side. I was walking the Camino Portuguese with these kids, they were 18 years going to college. And, I was like talking to them. They were kind of like to party fun. And one of the most, party ones at the end is like, what happened if suddenly, we go home and we try to find you and you don't exist, and this is just this weird guy that has been talking to you. So that's your guy from the albergue.
Totally. That's exactly the guy from the albergue. And he gave me so much information, like right down to the credentials, the credentials, like the pilgrim's passport. Well, that goes back to like Templar times. So pilgrims, you want to go take a walk on the Camino, you'd go to your local Templar commandery, give them your gold. They'd give you something called a credential, which was a code piece of paper, and you take it with you as you went. So you could take out money from the different Templar commanderies. That's one of the ways that they got super rich. It was illegal to charge interest, so they charged a 5% holding fee for your gold for storage space. And so that was one of the ways that they got vastly rich. But it's something that is still celebrated on the community today. That is your pilgrim's passport. That is the lineage from there. And I just love, and he was the one that told me about that. I was like, oh, I would have never known about that. That's so cool.
It is incredible. That's like one of the other day I was discussing with someone, what things in the Camino are real, what aren't. And, at the end I was telling them, like, does it really matter? And like the whole stories of the Templars, we know that, maybe 30% is real, 30% is not, and 30% we don't know, and we will never know. So does it matter at the end?
No, it doesn't. I mean, like, I don't think so, because you can never actually know what happened. I mean, you can't even actually know what happened 10 years ago,
Yeah.
like there's one story that we're told, and there's another story that's actually going on
Mhm.
that we have no idea, like, what's going on.
So
So,
that gets me to the point. I'm like, you talk about Templars, but
yeah.
the person that is the main character in the book is not a Templar. It's a
Right.
lady. Why a lady? Why a
So,
woman?
yeah, so my main character, and actually funny, the main character's changed a couple times. Well, it's changed drastically. So the lead character in the book is Princess Isabella of France,
Mhm.
who her father was King Philip of France, and he was the one that actually conspired with the Pope to round up and execute the Templars. So I have his daughter, like, he's the main baddie in the book, right? And his daughter is the heroine, coming through it. But yeah, so I started out with the lead character being Etienne, who is this Templar, a sergeant in the Templars, and he was the first one, and he was just like a white dude, like a white Templar dude, and then all of a sudden, um, like I changed it right before we sent it to my final editor. So I hired this editor that was like, I had written for New York Times bestsellers and whatnot. And so right before I sent it to her, or during that process, I changed my lead character from Etienne to Isabella because, well, she had a more compelling story in that way,
Mhm.
because, like, she has a bigger why. Like, who has your bigger why? In the overall series, Etienne does, but like for that first one, she did. And then Etienne actually went from being just like this white dude to being a person of color, because of all the Black Lives Matters things that was happening here
Uh-huh.
in the States. Um, I thought, when I was young, I had the Knights of the Round Table to look up to. I could read about King Arthur and his men, but they were all white dudes. And I thought, how cool would it be to have some little, like, some little guy read my book and be like, wow, he looks like I do. Wow, he's experiencing the same things I do. And then
Mhm.
also, in some of the Templar groups that I went to, some of the stuff I was reading was pretty scary. I know a lot of well, I know some Templars, and they're amazing, good, wonderful people. But some of the things in this group were like borderline hate,
Mhm.
stuff going on. And so I was like, this was kind of well, F you, I'm going to make my main character, who's a Templar, a person of color, because I don't
Yeah.
like what I'm seeing in here. And I want to fight against that. And so that was kind of like my political statement in this book. Instead of going marching in the streets, what I did is I put it into literature so I could change a million lives, whatnot, or have all these little kids look up to this character. So
And as your book, as I said, it's my book, and I do whatever I want, and because
yeah,
it's fiction and can everything, and if you don't
exactly.
like it, just don't read it.
And it's cool because, like, that turned his thread into something completely different. I mean, I bring in because of him, like, I bring in assassins, like the assassin, you right,
Mhm.
from back in the day, because like, I intertwined them with the Templar legend, which is really cool, and that would have never happened if I never changed it. So, like, I never know what's gonna happen, really, and it just sort of happens.
That's incredible. So, how will you describe Isabella? Why she was doing the Camino? Why she was fighting?
Well, okay, yeah. So, to begin with, like, her why. So, Isabella, we always have in writing, we have GMCs: goals, motivation, and conflict, right? And so, what was her goal? So, her father sent her on a quest to find the Knights Templar's most valued treasure, because he's looking up for it. Like,
Mhm.
King Philip wants to find this thing that the Templar, what made the Templars so rich. They went into Jerusalem 9 poor nights, and they came out the most wealthy organization in the world, right? In the world.
Mhm.
And so he wants whatever they found. And so he sends his daughter on a pilgrimage under the guise of, purification before she gets married to King Edward of England. See them. Stop me if I get too historical. I'll stop.
Oh, no,
But
no.
yeah, so her motivation, her goal is the secret quest that her father has sent it on her. Her motivation, though, is she doesn't want to get married. And
Mhm.
so she thinks, if I find this treasure for him, then I won't have to get married. So that's the motivation. And then the conflict is she runs into Etienne, the lead protagonist, and they knew each other at King Philip's court, but Etienne had been sentenced to death because of that, and he had escaped, and so she thought he was dead. So here she's finding her love, who's now a Templar, and that comes into conflict. That's kind of like the main conflict that starts in there. And so that's the goal, is motivation and conflict for Isabella.
That's incredible. And that all happens in the Camino de Santiago.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, you want to hear a funny story? Right. So I did 2 other Caminos after the one in 2017. And the last one I did in 2019 with my wife, we got to the Arc of San Antonio and we stayed there. And then who should show up, right? But this young guy that has, it pretty much looks exactly like Etienne in my mind. And, I was like, oh my God, this is so strange. And like, what's going on? And then the very next day, there had been this Italian girl that we were walking with who looked like a princess, and she'd been with this French guy, right? And they were kind of like, oh, I was like, oh my God, that's totally Princess Isabella, and the guy who loves her, but she doesn't love him, but he's like the escort, right? And so her guard. And so gradually, as we went, I kid you not, she left that guy for the dude who was like Etienne. and
Really?
I think they're actually still together, but it was almost exactly how I wrote this in the book. And no spoiler alerts, right? There's tons of other stuff that happens in there, it was like, what is going on? And I mean, and that's the cool thing. And also another funny story, right? So the first time on that same pilgrimage, just out of Pamplona, where you are, there's San Juanista, right? I believe it's called that. With the hospitaller albergue out there. So in my book, that's one of the main commanderies for the hospitallers, which it was for that region of the world.
Yeah, and it's from the Cruz de Malta. It's still a little church, and it's a tower, and it's close in Fitur.
Exactly. So I'm staying in there, right? I'm staying in there, and it's Friday the 13th. And for those of you that don't know, the Friday the 13th plays into Templar history, because on October 13th, Friday the 13th, 1307, the Templars were rounded up by King Philip. I mean, a lot of them disappeared. It was only the commanderies in Paris and a couple other places. But anyway, so it's Friday the 13th, full moon. I'm there. I'm like, whoa, Templars, awesome. And and so I'm working on my book outside, and 2 pilgrims are like, what are you working on? I was like, well, it's this book I've been writing, and it's awesome. And they're like, will you read it to me? And so they're the first people that I've really read my book to. And so besides my wife, and so I'm there, I'm reading to them, and I get past the first, the prologue, and then I kid you not, right as I stop, fireworks start going off over Pamplona. I was like, what is going on? This is crazy. What's happening? And fast forward a few days, we lose those people, but then they find us again. They're like, we can't stop talking about your book. And they had actually incorporated things from my book and characters in my book into their experience on the Camino. Like, they had gone past one place where there's like handprints in the Camino. And they're like, oh yeah, that was Gerhardt the Destroyer's handprints. And that was this guy's. And I was like, holy cow. These people are like actually living, like, it's changing their perception of the Camino. And they're like now entering this fantasy world. And that's one of the coolest things about the book, is it's a fantasy world, but it's in a fantasy world you can go visit today. And it's cool.
And that's one of the things that bring back, once you read the book without reading the book, one of the main things in your topics in your book is codes, is ciphers, is the whole, what is behind, the main thing, what you see may not be what you're really seeing. And, the Templars and the Camino, there is a ton of that.
Yeah.
What kind of things did you find out on the Camino that were for you, like triggering, or, those things that you're like, oh, this is so interesting?
Yeah. So, well, we'll start with Pamplona, where you are, right? So there's a couple of things there. So as I was saying, inside San Saturno.
San Saturnino? San Saturnino.
Yeah, Saturnino. It's like, I think of Saint Saturn is the way I think about it in my mind. So in there, it's like, it's kind of interesting too, right? So like a lot of things I found in the northeast chapels of the cathedrals, like of the churches, and that goes back to like Masonic temples are facing the east, and I found out all the cathedrals are facing the east, and the northeast corner is something that's important. And so a lot of stuff I found in there, and And this one, it was a little bit off, right? So I go in there, and it kind of has two chapels, two like alcoves. Well, the reason why is in this alcove, the main one that you go into is actually new, and it's not facing east. It's facing a different direction. And because I'm looking around that, I'm like, I don't know. And then I go into the one that's facing east, and I go into the northeast corner, and lo and behold, there I find, and it's actually in the video,
the horse with the Templar on top.
The horse, but beyond that, there's a horse with a Templar on top. But beyond that, inside the alcove down there, there's also the triangle with an eye in it, which is the symbol for Illuminati or the all-seeing eye.
Or the great, whatever you want to put there.
And so that's one of those symbols. And so I was like, okay, there's something in here. And so I'd see something like that, and then I'd incorporate it into my book. Yeah. And so that's like one of the things there. Also inside your other cathedral that you have there, there's more Masonic symbology. Once again, in the northeast, there's an alcove that has the square and compass in different variations. Like at the bottom, it has, well, depending on how the compass is positioned, it means different things. And so as you're going up, it's very interesting following the progression of the way that it's positioned all the way to the top, where baby Jesus is holding a compass in his hands, which is, so there's a lot of stuff that kind of comes into there. So, but that's just in Pamplona. And mind you, I only have like one day to do this research, like, because I don't live in these places. So just by like happenstance, I find all these things. Like it just comes. Now this is a really cool one too. In Lyon, once again in the northeast corner, there's another chapel. And well, first of all, Lyon, let's talk about the green men, right? So inside Lyon, there's all these green reliefs of the green men. And what a green man is it's a statue or a relief of a face with vines coming out of their mouth and whatnot. And it's in a lot of pagan symbology and a lot of other things. And it's actually in a lot of churches across Europe. And so, it's like a nature deity and like all that. But I'm thinking these guys are holding a secret. That's why their mouths are bound. They're holding a secret. And as you go up, there's in that northeast chapel, there's this really interesting carvings, right? And two of them you can see anytime. One is a man with antlers coming out of his head, and the other is a goat just opposite him, right? And like a goat head in the church. And some can say that there's that the man with antlers could be Moses, but it also goes into I can't pronounce this, Caminimus or something like that, who's another like deity from pagan religions. But the most interesting one is the Virgin Blanco, the statue that is supposed to be outside there, right? Well, the original was actually put into this chapel, right? So it's this very big statue, and you can't see behind it, and they keep the chapel locked every time I've been there, except on Good Friday. I happened to be there on Good Friday. The chapel is opened up. I've been there 2 other times. It hasn't been opened up. But on this Good Friday, the very first time I went there, I looked behind, and what's behind that statue is a severed head, like an image of a severed head that just looks crazy. And if you know about Templars, one of the things that they got accused of when they were rounded up, they were accused of heresy and a lot of things, but they were accused of worshiping a headless deity called Baphomet. And we go into what you can decode that word, and it comes out to other things.
And that goes into your books. We will listen and see that word many times.
Yeah, so you'll have to read the book to find out, but it goes into, well, what is that, and why is that in the church? And there's a whole bunch that goes into this, and I'm so excited for the conclusion of the book. It's going to be awesome, of the series. It's going to tie so much stuff together. But so that's some of that. And then even in like Santiago, right? So you have on the pillars, you have the marcada how do I say it? The mason's marks.
La marca del cantero.
Yeah, exactly. So on all the pillars, they have the mason marks, right? Going up. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, secret code, amazing. Right.
Later, and the big mason, because he was the biggest one of the biggest ones in the wall. I'm like,
it's incredible. Like, so every pillar in there has these markings on them. Now, you could just say, all right, these are just marks, but within there too, there's symbols that go back to coding systems, different coding systems, and some that even go back to other languages like Ethiopian, which is kind of crazy. But like, so these symbols, which could just be symbols, could also be a code hidden in plain sight, right? So actually, I looked like a crazy person. I'll tell you what, I sat there on one of my trips and I cataloged every pillar in the northeast corner of the church, like what every symbol was going up. And like, I was like, holy cow, what is all that? I mean, I'm just such a nerd. Like,
but it's the beauty of, the symbols and the Masons and all these secret, once you start researching, there is a lot of it that is true. I'm like, they use it, all of this, for a reason in the old days. And some of them is made up, thanks to books like the Da Vinci Code and others. But a lot of it is real, and a lot of it was used. And the beauty of the Camino, if you walk with the eyes, like someone like you or me, it's like you see all these codes and then you start thinking, what do they mean? Why they are here? Why all these things? And it's just something incredible that happens in the Camino, that you go one after another. And it's like, why?
Exactly. Why would they do that? Why would they leave that? And I don't know the why. I made up my own why, which goes with my book, which is pretty cool. And it's a fiction book. For those of you that know, it's a fiction. It's not. I'm actually, I'm probably going to do a companion piece with this book series that is going to have like the pictures from all my research and kind of like what it means behind it. And so at some time I'll do that companion piece as well. But yeah, like I said, we published this book last year. We're just about in November. We're releasing the second book to the public. It's at the editor right now. And we did a Kickstarter. We raised like $10,000 again for this second book. And it's at the editor right now. And it's really cool because it's just like I said, the Camino always provides, right? So I went on the first Camino. I got inspired for everything for the first book. The second Camino in 2018, I went again. And I was flying Ryanair from London, and my flight got delayed by like 5 days, right? Everybody knows, raise your hand if you know about Ryanair, right?
Yeah, and don't carry with a big backpack, don't print your tickets and...
Nothing. And so I was super upset. I was like, well, actually, no, I wasn't upset. I was like, the Camino always provides, I'm going at exactly the right time. So I get there and I meet the perfect people for the second book. I mean, they're perfect, and we had the perfect experiences, and we saw all this symbology. Like one of the guys I was walking with, he was like a walking dictionary on sacred symbology, especially with sacred geometry. Okay. And so I could geek out with him about, oh, look, there's a flower of life. Oh, look, there's a tree of life. Oh, look, like so much to the point where it's coming up everywhere, and you start seeing it. And then we get into like the deeper discussion about that. It's like even, one of the churches in, what's it called? In Casa Jerez, right? They have a pentagram for one of the stained glass windows, right? And before the pentagram came today to be known, represented with Satanism, just like Baphomet today became known with Satanism. Back then, it was actually related to Venus. And so every 7 years, Venus will track the pentagram shape into the sky. Right. And so like it has that symbology behind it, which goes into like, goddess worship and like other things like that. So it's just really fascinating to find that on a church there. And it wasn't just on that church. It was probably in like 4 other places in that city that I found it. And so, I mean, it's like, it's intense.
And it's one of the things, the Camino de Santiago is made of so many different, like branches. And like it's the spiritual part, it's the tourism, it's the food. It's getting to know people, but also we have to remember that this came from the old ages, and the Templars were there. There's a lot of things that we know that they were there for real, and we know that the hospitals were made, from what it was supposed to be a branch for some people of the Templars. Some people say that, the Hospitaleros were the Templars himself. There's some things that we know for sure that were Templar. There are some others that we don't know. Yeah. And if you see with the eyes of someone, all those things add to your experience. They say that Hebreiro is the Santo Grial, the San Grial, but it's another San Grial. They say also there's many different tales in the Camino, and that we were talking before, are they real? Are they not? I don't know, but they add to the experience, and they make you question, all the people that go to Santiago before you, the people that is walking there, all those little signals.
Exactly.
And isn't that the Camino Santiago? People, signals, it is real, it's not real. what do you believe? Some people go believing in God, some people go believing in something else. I don't know. It's just,
and that's really what I want my book to do. I want my book to awaken the curiosity in somebody enough that they'll go walk the Camino. As I told you before, my goal is to inspire 1 million people to walk the Camino. Like, that's it. If I make that contribution to this world, I will absolutely love it. So, and it's not for me. Like, I want them to have a life-changing experience. The Camino affected my life so much, changed me so much as a person, that I want to give that gift to other people who may not know about it. And the best way to do that is to pique their curiosity. Like, what is this Camino de Santiago thing? What do they have to do with the Templars? Like.
That's the thing. If in that way, you can excite anyone and make anyone going to the Camino just to look for the little Templar things, and like, they're going to get so much more. It's like I always say, if you go to the Camino thinking that it's going to be a sports experience, I don't think that you go for, sports. You go because something is calling you. But if that's your beginning reason, that it. At the end, you're going to be transformed in so many different ways. If you go looking for Templar signs, go looking for Templar signs. At the end, everything is going to...
And it's going to work on you. You're not going to have a choice. It's going to do exactly what it's going to do. And the other thing, like, we talked a lot about the Templar symbology, but there's also a lot of spirituality in this book too. And it's kind of interesting to see the way the series has shaped up. Like, the first book really deals with your own personal, like, I'll just call them sins, whatever, your own personal stuff that you're dealing with. And the second book deals with, they have to face the 7 deadly sins, which have taken on a physical form, which is kind of crazy. And so in the second book, they have to do that. And the third book is going to deal with original sin, like what is behind all this. So you see this evolution going from the self to the sins of the world to the original. And so beyond just the arc of finding this treasure, there's the arc of the spiritual progression as a person, which everybody who walks the Camino has some sort of thing working on them when they're walking.
And the experience, because they said also that the Camino is broken into 3 main parts, the beginning, the hard part, then the meseta, and at the end when you rise up to Febrero and then you get to Santiago.
That's true. That's true. I love that. So good to talk to a fellow pilgrim.
One of the things
just because you don't have the... let me see.
One of the things that I love about your book, is the thing that excites me the most about the Camino is the people, that you have taken people that you met in the Camino and made them part of the story. Can you tell us one, character that you created from someone you met?
Yeah, absolutely. Just want to show you some, just so you can nerd out with me really quick. So some of my symbols, if you notice, there's like...
what we are going to have to walk, and I'm throwing a stone to you and another project into my huge wall of projects.
Check that out. So I just want to entice you with all my codes that I have.
You know that they did kind of like a Camino escape room?
Oh, did they really?
Yeah, but I think we should create a game for the whole Camino and create like a new Camino game with all these.
There was a medieval game, a Templar game that related the Game of the Goose, I think it was.
Yeah, El Juego de la Oca is huge in Spain. But I think we need to make it, something with the ciphers, the story.
Let's do a game. Let's do a Templar game on the Camino. Let's do it.
That would be amazing. So tell us, someone that you met in your Camino that ended up being someone in the book.
Yeah, so I can tell you my favorite character in the book. Like, I love him so much. So it's a brother and sister team, Andy Sinclair and Claire Sinclair, right? So they're a Scottish brother and sister. So on that first Camino, as I'm walking, I meet these two, and they're just like drunk at noon, and they're hilarious, and I love them. And the more they drink, the less you can understand what they're saying, because they're
Scottish.
Yeah, exactly. And they're from Glasgow, so like you just like, as the day goes by, you can understand them less and less, but they're just so funny. And so I made them into a brother sister in the book, and as I'm walking with these guys, that kind of like brother sister love where you're always chiding each other and fighting and like that sort of thing. So they're like that. But as I was walking with these guys, I actually found out that this fellow who I based Andy on was dying of cancer. And this was like his last thing before, whatever happened, was going to happen next. And I found out his whole life he wanted to be a Templar. And so there is a possibility that maybe he became a Templar in this book. Maybe.
And for the ones that know, there's one Templar left in the Camino.
Yeah, he's just past
Tomas.
Pharaoh, right?
Have you talked to Tomas, or have you ever been
I've
with
been
Tomas?
there once, but I didn't have a chance to talk with him. Actually, I've been there more than once, but like I've only found out him about him on my last Camino, and I stopped in and he wasn't,
because
like,
that's one of the things I need. The first time I did my Camino, I walk inside, I stay there for a while. He tells us the stories, the power, and he's still, he's the last Templar in Spain, and it's kind of interesting that he's still, and he's a big part of the Camino. For the people that know Tomas from the Manjarin, and Manjarin has become also part of the what is the Camino experience. After Cruz de Ferro, you start walking, and he has his house there. He has created everything, and you will see him always with Templar cross and helping pilgrims. So
exactly. Yeah, no, I did speak. I met him, but I didn't have a chance to actually sit and speak with him because there's too many other people
there's always
around.
too many people around.
And there's some things that you only want to talk about in private before.
Plus also talking with the Templar, with someone that is a Templar and knowing all of this, and some people, they think this is kind of like, but also this last year the Templars have become real. I heard that the Rome has made the Templars back again into a kind of like an order.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, so it's kind of like a new group that is legal, because the Templars were banished from the Catholic Church for a long time, and they've been always people that have been calling
Philip and Pope Clement in my book.
Yeah, but there's still people that they have been following the Templars, and they've been calling themselves Templars. And there's a lot of people that talk, if the Order of Malta are the Templars, or if some people, the Illuminati are the Templars, or School of Bones or whatever. But the tradition of the Templars has been there, and nobody knows what happened in those years, and that's kind of like the beauty. But right now we know that there's a Templar in the Camino, and that's Tomas. And if you have the chance to go there and chat with him, he's a great fellow, and he's been doing great things for the Camino, and it's incredible that, whatever, if you believe, you don't believe, up to you.
Yeah, I mean, and today you also have like speculative Templars. So you like in Masonry, like Freemasonry, there's two ways you can go, like the Scottish Rite or the York Rite, and the York Rite ends with Templars. So there's still the speculative Templars as well with those organizations.
And we have the Masons, we have the Rotary, that they are, both kind of like into the whole thing. And that's what I like to think, that there's still things that we don't know. And I think that's also part of the beauty of everything, that there's a lot of things that we don't know.
Exactly. And it's so fun. And, that's kind of what I wanted to do with my book, was just to open up the questions, right? So people start asking questions, and they start going and doing more research and like doing all this fun stuff.
So you asked at the beginning that there's a treasure hiding in the Camino de Santiago. Have you found the treasure?
By decoding the code that the Templars left behind.
So have you?
Have I found the treasure?
Yeah.
You'll find out in the third book.
Okay. Because really, I think, that's such a beautiful meaning, that someone had a treasure in the Camino de Santiago.
Well, look at this. All right. So it's kind of interesting. So before the Holy Land fell, the Grand Master of the Templars was Arnold of Rioja, who was from Spain, right? And so if they wanted to get something out of like, out of danger from over here, where are they going to take it to? Like the end of the world, essentially.
The farthest away from the Holy Land.
Right. And at that time, the Camino de Santiago was the stronghold of Catholicism and Christianity in Spain and in that part of the world. And so it would make sense if I was going to take something, and I was a Spanish-born descent Grandmaster of the Templars, I would probably take something back there where I know it's going to be fortified and taken care of, at least for a while. And so I do believe at some point something was there. So it's it's interesting.
Yeah, we have to remember also the whole story of Santiago, and how they brought the remains of Santiago. It was through the Holy Land.
Exactly.
The disciples, they took it, and then they put it into a boat made of a stone, and they did what is right now known as the Variante Espiritual of the Portuguese Camino, and they went up into Santiago from Padrón. So if you start, if you make a wall and you start putting lines, kind of like makes sense, no?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much that can cross over, and there's so much we don't know. And I want to spark so much research. Like, I would love to go back and, as soon as my books make it huge, right, I want to go back and do research, just like spend 3 months, 4 months just in each town researching and cataloging all this stuff, because some stuff is disappearing. And this is really interesting. It's like inside, and I saw this recently in one of the groups, I didn't see it myself, but I saw this in one of the groups, inside the Cathedral of Santiago, in one of the domes, there was an eye inside a pyramid. right? At the Arch of the Dome. It's been painted over. So that was painted over. And so, and then also with this too, the first time I walked the Camino, or not the first time, but the 2017 one, when I went to Lyon, the audiobook I was listening to talked about the Green Man, and it talked about the pagan symbology in there. The next times I went and listened, it doesn't talk about it at all. And so it's very interesting. So it's like there's this history that's kind of being erased in some way, and I don't know why. I'm not sure, but it's just kind of makes you question. I really thought about it after I saw somebody else posting about that picture in Santiago, and I wish I would have seen it like myself. But it's like, interesting. So what are you erasing?
Why?
And why? Exactly.
But that's the thing, and a lot of people, we talk about, generation, civilization, we just go over, we just put things on top of the other. Suddenly something comes, it makes you think about. And that's the thing, there's so much in the Camino that we still don't know, that the beauty, why the Camino de Santiago, why it became such a great route. Is Santiago really buried in Santiago? Is it not? Does it matter?
Totally.
What were the Templars doing?
Exactly.
Why do people still today, they walk to Santiago more than to Jerusalem?
It's true.
Why the name of pilgrim is only the one that goes to Santiago? In Spanish, the pilgrim is only the one that goes to Santiago. Un peregrino is the one that goes to Santiago.
Really?
The ones that go to Rome and the ones that go to Jerusalem have a different name.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that.
The ones to Rome are Romeros, and the ones to Jerusalem, I don't remember the name. I'm going to check it right now. Palmero. Because of the palms.
Okay. Got it.
So it's funny, right now in English we will say pilgrim for everything, but in Spanish it's not. Everyone had a different name.
That's so interesting.
Pilgrim, only the one that goes to Santiago.
I love that the Camino is pilgrim, like peregrino. I love that so much. That's so cool.
And it doesn't have anything to do, because Roma, Romero makes sense, the Palmero to Jerusalem also makes sense, but why peregrino to Santiago? I don't know. One of those things that
I can't wait for you to read the whole series and then have a conversation with you about the third book when it's done.
I think we'll have to walk the Camino. And there is a group right now that's called the Slow Strollers in the Camino. They walk 10K every day.
Yeah.
I think if you and I walk the Camino, we can probably do no K every day. Just, 10 beers and 10 pinchos.
Exactly. And then going into all the cathedrals and doing
research. Cathedrals, and just not the cathedrals. There's so many, buildings. There's so much story in everything. That's what when people come to Spain, if they're from abroad, they're from the States, they're from Australia, I'm like, walking the Camino is not just walking. There is a lot of energy, there's a lot of culture, visiting churches is not about the church, it's not about being a religious person, it's history of the world. And we have to see, Leon, Burgos, even if you're not Catholic, walking through those places without visiting them,
you have to.
Come on.
You have to. You're not getting the full experience if you're not stopping in, I should say you have to, because I don't think there's any wrong way to do the Camino, but it's you're missing a big part of the experience if you don't.
And that's the thing, the Camino is being open about whatever. And I think if you're going to the Camino, you go there with that open mind. And, like when you read a book or when you go open to experience and not opening yourself to the 100% of it. And then you decide. I have found many people that say, this calls me, this doesn't call me. But one of the things that, the Templars thought is like a lot of places in Earth have a higher connection, higher energy. Mm-hmm. And there is a lot of, different mythologies, different people that they talk the same. And, for example, we have a lot of places like that in Navarra and a lot of places in the Camino, that there are places that they thought were, the connection with heaven, with God, with whatever, it was stronger. And a lot of people, they believe that. And I think that's also part of the Camino, the beauty, that why we feel so connected.
I think so. You feel it. It presses on you when you're there. Like, I feel that presence of God so much when I'm on the Camino. And in some spots that you don't even expect. It's like, why am I crying right now?
Why? But it happens so many people. Why is this church here? Why is this, little place here? Why?
Well, it's interesting too. Have you heard about ley lines?
Yeah.
Yeah. So possibly the Camino could be on an energetic ley line of the earth.
And you say it in the title of your book.
The way through a field of stars.
Why, the Camino goes through the Milky Way? Why the Milky Way is on top?
Exactly.
Why? people all over the different ages, because a lot of people, they go, people has been walking to Santiago some ages, and like, no, people will go to Fisterra because it was kind of like the end of the world, the sun. People, and generations and humans been following the sun, and that will make sense. So it's not just the Camino. There were people there before the Camino.
Yeah, actually, I talk about that. There was the cult of the dying sun was in Finisterre, and that's one of the reasons why St. James went to go preach there, was to convert them, which is kind of, it's fascinating. Like it's always had that spiritual energy, that charge going into it. You feel it.
Incredible. I guess, or we bore the hell out of everybody that was listening, or they are all ready to read your books like me. And why a trilogy? Because also, the tree is also part of the Templars, and it's been part of all these mystical things. Why a trilogy? Do you know from day one that it was going to be a trilogy?
I'm hoping it's a trilogy. I mean, hopefully I can get everything into the third book.
If not, will have to be 7 or no, any of all those numbers, because from 3 up to 7, I don't think the 5 or the 6, 6 maybe, but 5 is going to be hard to find some external meaning.
So it's been a really interesting journey with this book. It's like I said, it wrote itself in a lot of ways. And the first one's called The Way Through a Field of Stars, and the second one's called Back Through the Field of Stars, and the third one's called Home Through a Field of Stars. So the way back home. And when I picked these names, I didn't even put them together, that it was like the way back home, until I was doing an interview and someone's like, "Oh, did you mean to do the way back home?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" But
there's even secret meaning in your books without knowing.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's more meaning that come up. Like I'll read my book again and something will come up that I didn't even notice before. And I was like, what is this?
For the ones like me, I used to watch a TV show, it was called Fringe. I don't know if you watch it.
Fringe? No, I haven't watched it.
It's you have to, because every day at the beginning of the chapter, there was like a secret code or something going on.
Oh, that's cool.
Is there a secret code on the secret codes of your book?
Yeah, actually, well, one thing I forgot to mention to you, you'll love this. So if you look at the book cover up close, you see all those little markings?
Yeah.
So after you've read the book, you can decode the cover. So I put secret codes into the cover that you can only decode after you've read the book, which is kind of cool. And there's even one code in here that you can't decode until you've read the second book.
Love it. I used to read the book when I was a kid. I was like, what was the name? But it was also about, secret codes and codes.
Does it have like mice and elephants and stuff like that? And they're at a party and...
No, this one was about a kid that discovered, that there was like a wall behind that was, made of, leprechauns and stuff, and they have a secret code, but they were also with technology. So every book will have different coding. Artemis Fowl.
Okay. Oh, that sounds like I've heard that name before.
Yeah, and the code has codes that you can only decode with the other book, and different codes, and
that's awesome.
I love it. It's just, it's just fun because it makes you think, it makes you excited, and at the end there's like a lot of people, got pissed with the Da Vinci Code because I'm like, this is not real. I'm like, dude, this is literature. That's the beauty. You don't know. It could be.
And you don't know. You don't know.
But it makes perfect sense. And that's when, a story that makes sense, that's when you get, the audience hooked. And with your book, I can tell you, with just 2 chapters, I'm hooked because it feels real. It also goes on a place that I know what it is. And there's things that I can see with my hands and touch, all the symbols, all the things in the stones. And that's
should I read him? Should I read him that prologue? Would you like
go for it?
Yeah. Okay, I'll do that. And speaking of, well, since you mentioned Da Vinci Code, I'll say something. Hold on. Check it out. Map of the Camino.
By the way, don't follow that one if you're walking the Camino. If you
exactly. You'll end up lost like me. And one other kind of cool thing too is at the beginning of each chapter, I put the shells, because just like you're following the Camino to your next destination, you're following the shells in the book to the next thing. So it's kind of another little thing. And one thing before I read here, with the Da Vinci Code, inside Rosslyn Chapel, because I've been there a few times as well, they also have green men, and they also have headless symbology inside there as well. And so it's very interesting. Just for those of you who want to go to Scotland and check that out, same symbology that's on the Camino, same symbology in Rosslyn Chapel. Okay, cool. So let's see. Prologue, Spain, 1183. Chisels rang out in the great cathedral of Santiago de Compostela as Grand Master Arnold of Rioja inspected the mason's fine work. He traced his fingers over a newly hewn symbol on a massive pillar. The final code, one last precaution to protect the treasure and bind the evil it has brought into this world. Arnold's body stiffened as the sound of footsteps echoed toward him. A burly man came into view, and Arnold loosened his clenched fists. Oh, it's just you, Apollo. Apollo stopped and put his hand on his stomach in a sign of fidelity. Grand Master, the work is almost complete. Would you like us to engrave anything else? Arnold looked past Apollo's shoulder at the other masons. They had worked ceaselessly since their arrival, and every column lining the immense cathedral was now covered in symbols. No, that will suffice. You and the others have done good work, God's work. Forgive me for saying so, Grand Master, but desecrating a church with these symbols doesn't feel like God's work. Arnold chuckled and shook his head. He gestured toward the symbols he had been examining. I hope neither you nor anyone else will ever have to understand this. Apollo nodded. Forgive me for questioning, Grand Master. There is nothing to forgive. You are strong and loyal, my boy. You would have made a fine soldier in the Holy Land. Arnold's vision blurred, and the smile disappeared from his face. He heard the screams again. They had haunted his waking thoughts since he had left Jerusalem. He rubbed the stitching of the red cross that adorned his white tunic and muttered, A Templar's sworn duty is to protect. How many has this evil taken since? Grand Master? Oh, it is nothing. That'll be all. Arnold straightened his garments and walked to a pew where his sword lay. He hoped its weight would steady his shaky hands. Arnold knelt and the pew groaned, sending its melody to the rafters where it mixed with the beating chisels. He made the sign of the cross and bowed his head. My Lord Jesus, I pray our actions will protect what you have entrusted to us, and that you will forgive the sins of my predecessor, Odo. The screams began again. Odo's name triggered the memory of the day Arnold's life in the world changed forever. Arnold took a few breaths, but the Battle of Montesquieu continued to rage in his head. It was there that Odo used the power of the treasure to enable 80 Knights Templar and a few thousand soldiers to decimate an army of 26,000 Saracens. Odo was warned not to use the treasure, but he didn't listen. A drop of perspiration fell from Arnold's brow and hit his clasped hands. He blinked a few times, unsure how long he had been trapped in that awful memory. A well of emotions rose inside him as he stared at the cross. I fear Jerusalem will fall soon. Arnold's hairs stood on end. His prayer was interrupted not by sound, but by an unsettling silence. The hammers and the chisels of the masons had ceased. Everyone was gone. Arnold took the sword from his lap and walked cautiously in the direction he had last seen Paolo. As he approached the final pew, the smell of death hung in the air. Arnold took a putrid breath and rounded the corner, weapons drawn. At the base of the column lay Paolo's severed head, staring at him. His eyes, which had been so full of life moments earlier, were now transfixed with a look of horror. Tears filled Arnold's wrinkles like Paolo's blood filled the cracks of the floor. Were those screams real? To his left, there was movement. An ominous shape crouched in the dark recesses of the church. A shadow. Arnold closed his eyes. He knew what was coming. He was the last living Templar from the Battle of Montesquieu. My Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. It ends here, today. He whispered through quivering lips. A deafening hiss filled the air, and Arnold felt movement like a winter's wind. He raised his weapon just in time to intercept a curved sword. He opened his eyes, but it made no difference. All he saw was darkness, a giant shadow looming over him.
The shadows.
The shadows.
They play a game. That's the thing. There are shadows in the Camino too.
Exactly. The shadows that attack you on the Camino, and you got to fight them off or accept them or, do whatever.
I remember a book with shadows also in the Camino and with a fight.
Ah, yes. I've read that one once, I think. Was that The Pilgrimage, yes?
Yeah, this is The Pilgrimage. For me, The Pilgrimage is a good book, but it's one of the most esoteric from Paulo Coelho. For me, as you say, the book from Paulo Coelho is The Alchemist. And I always give it away to my friends, if I have anyone that I'm helping. And it's one of those books that is more related and that you can relate more to the Camino than I think than The Pilgrimage. Yeah,
it's true. It's true, because that book's about a journey as well.
And how the treasure is somewhere that you never expected.
Exactly. It's so true.
Oh my God, we can be here talking for ages.
I know, I could totally nerd out. We definitely have to get together when on my next Camino.
For sure, and there is many Templar things here, and in Navarra we have a couple of things. In Ponferrada now they do the Night Templars. They do the holiday where everybody dresses as a Templar, and they go to the castle and they have a big, festival over there. And I think it's, all these things are part of the history. They are part of the thing. And as we say, at the beginning, all of this is just to encourage someone. So, so if this little story can help someone go to the Camino, have fun, enjoy, and also go the Camino, like hell catching, that can be maybe your game. You have to try to find all these little clues and where they were. And
Totally.
And the fun part is that it's true. There is a lot of things hidden in, right in front of
Right
you.
there,
And
in plain sight, and people don't see them. But once your eyes are opened, you can't help but see them. You see them everywhere.
And that's, what sometimes the Camino does. They give you the special glasses to see where others don't see.
Exactly. Oh, that's a beautiful saying.
So anyway, where can we spend, where can we find your book? What can we do if we are just, right after listening? Where can we get it?
Yeah, sure. So the book is on Audible. So if you have Audible, you can get it there. If you prefer audiobooks, we have it on Amazon. So Amazon.com, Through a Field of Stars. We have our website, www.throughafieldofstars.com. We also have a link tree. So Through a Field of Stars link tree, and I'll send that to you because that
Perfect. We'll put it on the notes on the...
Yeah, the link tree has links to everything else. And remember, our second book is coming out in November 18th is when the second book releases. And I'm so excited for it. I wish I had the cover with you so I could show you. Can I share my screen?
Of course. Yeah, you can share your screen.
Yeah, let me pull it up because I think you'll like this as well. Sneak preview of the second book cover. It's going to change a little bit from this, but
so what is going to be the date of the release?
November 18th is when we're doing the release. Okay, I'm going to share here.
You know what is funny? That I have your episode to go on November 17th.
You have what to go on the 17th?
I have this, planted as to go one day prior to the day that you have to.
You're kidding me! Oh, yeah. Dude, that's awesome. I love that. So it's coming out tomorrow, guys.
No, we will do it. Now that we know, we will do a big event, and we do a pre-launch, and we will put your... Okay, so here we go with the screen, and you can...
So here, can you see?
Yeah.
Yeah, so a central part of the book is actually this symbol here, which is the seed of life. And inside the seed of life is the tree of life. And this is one of the main tenets in Kabbalah, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. You'll find it a lot of places on the Camino. And then the part that I think you'd really like is I have like cross of Jerusalem here, the Hospitaller cross, the cross of St. James, the Templar cross, and then a triangle, which goes into a lot of the symbolatry. And then back here we have secret codes once again. So I just thought you might get a kick out of that. And for those of you that are listening, this book comes out live tomorrow.
Wow.
Help us to launch. I mean, like the most important part for a book is the first the first day, because Amazon works in spikes. So if you really want to support a fellow pilgrim, go onto Amazon tomorrow, November 18th, look for Back Through a Field of Stars and help support us.
Yeah, let's help a fellow pilgrim, make another book. And at the end, what you were saying at the beginning, this whole thing is not your way of life. It's something that helps you as part of you now, but it's also to help other people to go to the Camino. And as I think, we are all of the people that we are in the Camino, just said, making a movie, making a book, podcast, Instagram, we're all giving back to the Camino. I think the Camino give us so much that it's just the way that each one has to give back is different. Some people are hospitaleros, some people create nonprofits, some people write a book.
And we all have the same goal. And that's to get people to the Camino and just have life-changing experiences.
And that goes to the almost last question.
Yeah, sure.
The movie or the TV show. Where are we gonna be able to see?
For the books.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely planning on making it into a TV show or a movie. I've actually, one of my other careers, I was in film for a while, did film in Hollywood for a bit. And one of the distributors who actually did the Power Rangers was looking at possibly doing this.
Power Rangers! Yeah. Are the Templars going to go and transform?
Templar power! Right, so they're looking at the book. I actually need to circle back and touch base with them. But that is one of my other goals with this book, is to have it be a TV show so it can reach even more people. Like, I just wanted to reach 1 million people. And so, and I think it would make an amazing TV show and movie, and we could come shoot it on the Camino. And you could have a little scene if you want to be an extra Templar, like when we go film in Paparata in the Templar castle, or you could be the priest in Pamplona that we talked to.
And the last question I always ask everyone, and when is your next Camino?
Well, it was actually supposed to be a year ago. So pretty much as soon as we're able to travel back to Europe, and probably after COVID passes, we'll come back and do another one. But yeah, as soon as COVID passes, we'll come back. I'm taking my nieces. Oh, I forgot to mention, this is something cool too. Like, I like to put my money where my mouth is. So one of the things I'm doing with this book is I'm taking 10% of the proceeds and putting it towards a fund, pilgrimage fund, so that people who can't afford to go to the Camino will have an opportunity.
That's amazing, because right now the Camino People is also a nonprofit, and I'm working with people like you that they created business in the Camino, and a lot of people, they think that when we create business, it's mostly for our own, but I'm already talking with a couple of business to create a Camino fund to start bringing people with different situations into the Camino.
Awesome. Well, let's talk further. But yeah, my goal is to take 10% of this and put it into a fund, so that people who think that they don't have the resources to go walk the Camino, we can get them the start to get there. I was going to launch it this year, but obviously with COVID, I didn't. And so I'm going to launch it probably, after COVID. And hopefully by that time we'll have a lot more. I mean, we've already made great sales, but I want to make a lot of sales so I can send a whole bunch of people to the Camino.
That's great. Let's hope that, after this interview, we'll make even more, so we can help more people and bring in more pilgrims into the Camino.
Absolutely. That's the goal.
Anyway, Brian, thank you so much for having such a great time. Thank you so much, for spreading the Camino love, and, the also the Templar and all the codes and all this, craziness that some of us lost. But thank you so much for, for being such a joy. And, I think, as you say, the Camino changed people, and you can see it in you. I'm like a professional dancer into a writer right now, spreading the love through the Camino. I'm like, who knows where the Camino is going to take you? But you just have to do one thing, take a step forward. And as we said at the beginning, the Camino, you don't choose to do the Camino. 99% of the times the Camino calls you, and you just have to say yes. So let's hope that this book is the little key that opens, the window of the Camino for many pilgrims out there.
I hope so. Thank you for that.
And as always says, buen camino, ultra ella.
Buen camino. We'll see you soon.